Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of 6, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. All right. Hi, everyone. I have Amanda Radke here today. She's a South Dakota cattle rancher, a homeschool mom of 4, motivational speaker, and author of 8 children's books. She celebrates rural America, hardworking farmers, and ranchers daily on her retail site and blog. Wow, Amanda, I am so excited to have you on today because I feel like we align so well. Tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And I agree. I think we have a lot in common, so this should be a fun chat. But I'm an accidental homeschooling mom. The pandemic hit, and I found myself at home on our ranch, virtual schooling. And so we decided, hey, we can call our own shots in life. And so we decided just to go all in on homeschooling, and became pleasantly surprised that it aligned so well with our ranch life and just starting to incorporate our kids into everything we did and all of the life lessons that go with it. And I'd always kind of worked in the agricultural space, speaking at conferences and writing these children's books and selling them on the road or going to schools and libraries. And so it's actually been really fun to be able to bring them along for the ride to trade shows or school events or my conferences too. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Oh, I love that. I mean, the pandemic was such a wonderful catalyst to, help people take that transition into homeschooling. But yeah, it fits our rural life so much better. And even though we started 7 years ago, the pandemic just reassured us that we were making the right choice.
Yeah, there was definitely good things that came out of the world shutting down, which ironically was, as we're recording this, is 3 years ago to the day pretty much. But
I know.
yeah, I mean, sorry.
It was actually tomorrow. Okay, so March 14th was the day they sent me home from the hospital with my son who was in the NICU.
Oh, wow.
Because they were like, everything is shutting down. We don't care completely if he's ready to go home or not. You take your baby, you get your supplies, and you go home.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had barely been off tube feeding like 36 hours when we took him home.
Oh, wow. And isn't that funny? I think everybody will remember, it's kind of like a 9/11 thing, where they were, what they were doing. I was speaking at a Women in Ag event in Louisiana, and I was the luncheon speaker, and I totally bombed because every person in the room they immediately got crestfallen, and I'm thinking like, what did I say to offend these people? And I get off stage and I found out that they had all gotten a notification during my speech that their schools were shutting down. And so I was seeing all these women panic that thinking, it's spring semester and I got to teach my kids at home, and by the time I got home from that trip, our schools had shut down for the spring semester too. And so we just found ourselves in this wild world of kind of forcibly having to slow down and reprioritize what mattered in life. And yeah, of all the craziness, there's just a lot of blessings that came out of it, I think.
I really, especially kind of for us in some of this like ag space, it made us realize how important what we were doing was. So I think
especially like looking at food too, with shelves being bare and people panic buying and hoarding and prices going up, and all of a sudden everybody in the world is looking, where does our food come from and why is it not here, and why are my favorite brands that I buy out of stock? And so I think that's been kind of a wonderful shift too, of more people wanting to have backyard gardens or chickens or goats or whatever they can to be a little more self-sufficient. And as they do that too, they're also realizing how hard it is to grow food. It's not easy.
No, it's not. I mean, I've always had some hand in growing our own, my own food, our own food. My family was a big hunting family and we had a cattle ranch in California. But I mean, even taking that, we always had meat in the freezer and tomatoes in the summer. But when we did our shift, actually, it was a little bit before COVID, a couple years before COVID, my husband found out he had a digestive disease and we had to change how we did everything. And so it was so eye-opening to be like, I always saw myself as a home cooker. I always saw myself as somebody who provided food for the family. And what I was doing was just a drop in the hat compared to what it actually looked like to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, it does. It's basically a full-time gig, just producing enough food for yourself, much less, the world. And we've kind of become, in this age of convenience and everything just being one click away, we've kind of taken for granted all of the essentials of life, the food, fiber, and energy. And I do think the last couple of years have kind of shifted people's perspective to really look at those essentials of life and ultimately, I think, want to have more conversations with farmers and ranchers, just to have those relationships and open those doors for communication. And I know that's one of the biggest things I talk about on the road at these conferences is, so much of the misconceptions that are out there about agriculture and food production. And it's really hard to address some of those myths when they just permeate culture. But now for the first time in a really long time, it feels like those doors of communication are opening up direct, where the farmer gets to tell their story thanks to social media and gets to make those connections and bridge that gap and bring people back closer to the farm and their roots. Because at one point in time, most of us were growing our food, grandparents, great grandparents, etc.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's kind of ironic that one of the best things about technology is that it's connecting us to our traditional roots, at least in this day and age right now.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really amazing thing. I worry about, losing that connection at some point, not even just as our business, but as that positive piece of it. I'm writing a book on raising self-sufficient children right now, and I'm doing a lot of research on what technology means in kids' lives. And of course, we know all the bad things, and there's even more when you go deeper into our biology and what it does to our brain chemistry and stuff. But some of the research I'm finding also talks about how it just kind of opens kids up to information that they would have never had. And sometimes that's a positive, sometimes it's not. But I even look at myself, that if I would have had some of this information, 20 or even more years ago, some of the boundaries I would have set and things, just having that type of information, I wish I'm glad that that's available to our kids.
Yeah, I think with anything, there's pros and cons, and we've definitely become a lot more careful about screening, what our kids are exposed to, and that makes it a lot easier when you're homeschooling, of course, that we can unplug from certain things. But on the flip side, I've found in our homeschool routine that our kids are able to go down such fun rabbit holes when they, if they're reading a book. An example today, my daughter was reading a book that I sell on my website that's about pioneer life. And she was like, I really want to learn more about this, and especially the gold rush. And of course, there was a South Dakota gold rush as well as a California gold rush. And so we pull up YouTube and we found some documentaries, and now she's writing her own story about a pioneer family she's made up in her mind that is headed west to go find gold. So you just never know the rabbit holes that these kids will go down. And that's really fun as a parent too. Like, it's interesting. Let's learn about it together.
Yeah. How old is she?
8.
Okay. My 14-year-old daughter, she is really enjoying seeing how many people love my storybooks.
Okay.
And so she's wanting to write a series of short stories called The Tale of Two Brothers. And it's about all the mischief her brothers that she babysits get into.
Does she want to come babysit at my house? Because our boys are 6, 5, and 4.
Oh,
and let me tell you, I think teaching 3 rowdy little cowboys how to read is going to be the single hardest thing I ever do in my life.
You know what? I have a 3 and a 5-year-old right now. Both boys. My 3-year-old is I'm not even sure he's human, but that's a whole nother. I'm pretty sure, like, I actually just talked about this on my last podcast interview. You know the movie Lilo and Stitch?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure he's part Stitch. Like, he just bites and growls. It's like,
Well, I
but
don't know if it makes you feel better, but I can relate. And I was one of 3 girls. My mom was one of 5 girls. My
oh
sister has
wow.
all girls. So nobody gets it. Like, no, I was ill prepared for all these feral boys, but it's an
Right.
adventure. It really is.
Yeah, feral. That is the best word to describe it. But so my 5-year-old, he doesn't want to learn to read. He doesn't want to learn his letters. He doesn't want to learn how to rhyme words. He's just not interested. And the other day we were doing math, and we're doing Saxon math, which I was raised on Saxon math. So my kids do Saxon math. I actually switched my older kids off of it for a minute, and they were like, can we go back? It's the only thing that makes sense. And so I start my 5-year-old on it, and he's like, this is great, but can I do more?
Wow.
Okay. So I got him the Good and the Beautiful math as well, because I could download it for free. And, I'd already spent a lot on Saxon for the year. So Saxon is very like learning your patterns and your shapes and how to read a calendar and those types of things at the beginning, which is what we're doing for kindergarten. And the one that we have for the Good and the Beautiful is a little bit more like adding your numbers, and like you kind of get to do that more hands-on, like worksheet type work. And so he has 2 math curriculums and dabbles with a preschool English one because he's not interested in it at all. And I'm like, you know what? We're sitting here, we're like, when he does the Good and the Beautiful, he sits in my lap, we read it together. He's still learning. And I mean, if my negotiation is we don't do letters right now, so we can do 2 maths, am I really complaining?
Wow, I think I needed to talk to you just for this reason alone, because my 6-year-old is the exact same way. Like, he's in kindergarten technically, but he's advanced to 2nd grade math. Like, we just keep completing curriculum and just moving. We've done Good and the Beautiful. He's doing CTC math online, which we really like. But yeah, the reading stuff, it's like he's not behind. I mean, what is behind anyway? But he's just not as interested, And so it has made me want to pull my hair out, because I'm like, oh, but your sister was at this stage,
And girls are going to be at a different stage.
Yep. And it can steal your joy, I think, when you get into that trap of where are they supposed to be, or what are the public school kids doing, or are we behind? It's like each kid, as long as they're advancing and you can see progress, that's wonderful. And I guess too, I have to remind myself, like, simple is good at these little ages. It doesn't have to be a lot. And a lot of the learning is just being along for the ride of life and all the things you're doing outside or on the road or wherever you're going. I've found my kids, I mean, they're counting change when we're selling books at places, and they're shaking people's hands, and they're talking to adults. And I remind myself, I could never buy this in a curriculum. I couldn't recreate this anywhere,
Yeah, I mean, my kids, we did a cross-country trip to go to a conference this last year. It's been a planned trip for a while to do a cross-country, so we mixed it in with a conference. And we went through your neck of the woods and, South Dakota, but we hit all the major, historical landmarks. We did all the Oregon Trail stops. We read, while we were driving, I was reading In the Footsteps of Crazy Horse so that we could stop at all the Crazy Horse places. Like, my kids got so much out of that you wouldn't get just reading a book. Even we read Crazy Horse 3 years ago, and or In the Footsteps of Crazy Horse, and we're reading it again, or we read it again while we were traveling so they could hear the descriptions while we were driving through that area.
That's so amazing. So how do you balance, you're a working mom like me, and we're ranching. So right now it's calving season, and I'm on the road all the time. Like, how do you balance it all? And I hate that word balance, because it's impossible, but just how do you juggle everything that you're doing while homeschooling?
My short answer always is I don't.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's in a funny way of like, haha, I don't, my house is trashed right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's legitimately, I have delegated work and I have accepted that we have different seasons of life than everybody else.
Yep.
We have been gearing up for conference season. I'm finishing writing a rather large book right now. I've been speaking. My podcast is blowing up. I just hired a new team. We are not doing school right now. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. And
Um,
like the mom guilt that comes with that, I'm trying to learn how to set that aside and remind
mhm.
myself that this is our unique family, and we get to guide how we're
Yeah.
doing things.
You know,
And it's okay.
we sometimes do more school in the summertime than we end up even doing during some of the rest of the school year. And at first my kids balked because they were public school kids that have transitioned, but now like my younger ones, they don't even know the difference. They weren't even born before we pulled the older kids from public school.
We absolutely do the same thing. My speaking schedule is a lot slower in the summer, and we're not calving, and
Hmm.
we're dealing with the snow. So it's, yeah, summertime when it's hot, it's like, okay, the
Yeah.
hottest part of the day. Let's go inside and get some stuff done, and then we
And
can go
well,
play and be wild.
we don't have air conditioner here. A lot of people in North Idaho don't have ACs, and
Oh,
the
sure.
last couple summers it's been really hot. So I'll load up the kids and take them to town and we'll go to the library and, do some math or do some reading together. And then we go get an ice cream and head out and go huckleberry picking until dark.
That's so
And that's our
awesome.
summertime routine.
Yep. That's
And so
that's a good idea to change locations too. Sometimes
mhm,
just to switch things up to avoid the temptation of all the other things going on at home that
yeah. And
you can get
huckleberry,
distracted by, or the kids.
and for us, huckleberry picking, it's a long drive out to where we go. So I say long drive, about an hour drive in the woods, which is maybe 5 miles. And we will I read to them out of different, textbooks that I'm reading at the time, like something that I think they'd find interesting. We get out there, we bring a, book on foraging or herbology. And not only are we picking huckleberries, we're learning about like, the different wildflowers that grow that are edible or medicinal. And even though I'm not a big herbalist, like the most I do is I use essential oils when I'm making like lip balm or something. You know, I
Sure.
I douse my kids in lavender at least once a day. And but just to have that extra learning opportunity.
Yep. We've done that too. Just, I mean, right in our backyard, the cattle are grazing in the summer months. And I
Mhm.
took the kids out, and this is native grassland. So it's never been touched by a plow, and
Mm,
hopefully never will. And so we've been teaching the kids about, there's just hundreds, if not thousands of varieties of grasses and wildflowers and different things growing out in the
mhm,
pasture. And so we got a book to ID plants, and the kids picked plants, and then we put them on big cardboards, and they would label everything and look them up in the book. And man, I was
mhm.
learning so much too. I was like, this is, you just look out there and you're like, I don't know, it's green grass, whatever. But if you really
Yep.
start digging in, it's like, wow, there's so much just right in our backyard that you just take for granted if you look at it every day.
Yeah. Well, we live right on the edge of like a valley, and we had a forester come out to get a forestry report for a tax thing on our land. And there's kind of like an edge where there used to be the railroads, but they took the railroad out. And we thought that this whole edge was just for the railroad. And turns out it was actually before they started damming the river would come all the way up to the edge of where our property is. And we're right on the Canadian border, and there's a port by our house, which used to be the main Idaho port. And where the water would come up, that was where like the Indians actually used to come and like work by the edge of the river. And I mean, just all sorts of history. So the kids got out there and started, looking around. They found arrowheads on our property. Then they got out there with a metal detector and found all the parts to an old wagon buried in our pasture.
That is so cool. I
Yeah,
bet they
like,
freaked out.
oh, they were so excited because when they found one piece of it, and they actually had a couple of buddies over. So it was like, 5 teenage boys out there. And they were so excited because they found one piece and they were able to find the whole rest of it by figuring out the shape of the wagon.
Wow.
It was like, it literally, like, it broke down right there. And I mean, they even found, it was just the metal parts left at this point, but they could see where the wood had like disintegrated, like in between and stuff. I mean, they were so beyond excited.
Wow. Again, you can't buy it in a curriculum.
You can't, no. And it gave opportunities for them to come in and us to talk about the history of this area and stuff.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that's my goal with my kids, is just to foster a curiosity and an ability to be lifelong learners. Because even though I've been out of school for a bajillion years, I'm still learning. And I want them to have that joy of learning and just that natural curiosity to explore new topics and research and read up on things. I think that's been the beauty of it all, really.
Another one is my husband's a stay-at-home dad, which as a rancher, I mean, that's we're ranchers too, not as big as you guys, I'm sure. We have a pig farm, but in the West, we're all ranchers.
Right.
I grew up on a ranch, so it feels weird to me to call it a farm. So my husband, he's a disabled vet, and so he's home with our kids, and he's able to run our farm and help run the house when I can't.
Sure.
And then I have no shame in hiring a housekeeper once in a while.
Oh yeah.
It's like a gift. It's like a gift to me.
Yeah, the cleaning, if I could definitely find someone that could come help me out do that, I would happily give up that job.
I used to hire, I had a teenage girl that came in. She was 18, and that was like her job in high school, and she went off to college, so that sucked. I lost her. But she did a great job. I mean, she'd come in, I'd have her come in for 4 hours once a week, and her first job would be to clean my kitchen spotless. Like, could take a couple hours and just get my kitchen back the way it needs to be each week.
Sure.
Like, her first time coming was like, I mean, it took her the whole for 4 hours. I think she was actually here for closer to 6. And she got it all clean. And then the next week she'd come back and spend 2 hours cleaning the kitchen, and then 2 hours either cleaning something else or organizing something else.
So nice.
And yeah, I mean, she spent 2 hours one time. She took everything out of my pantry and like cleaned all my shelves and put everything back in like by category. But she was also a teenager. So like, I had people over, we had our swine weigh-ins for fair, and we were having people over for a barbecue afterwards. And so she was at the house cleaning while we were at weigh-ins. And we got home, and I walk over to the refrigerator to offer my guests a drink, and I open the door, and she'd swept, like when she swept, a bunch of trash had gone under the lip of the refrigerator. And so I opened the refrigerator door, and there's like empty yogurt cups and stuff. And I'm like,
oh no.
So I made a joke out of it. I'm like, how can you tell when your housekeeper's a teenager? They clean like a teenager.
Right. Oh, and isn't that the thing though? Everything for a season, I feel. And as moms, I think it's really hard for us to admit, like, you can't do it all, and you should, like, it's exhausting to try to do it all. And so it's okay to be vulnerable and ask for help too, to fill in the gaps during certain seasons where you're busier, you have more going on, whether you're on a farm or a ranch or whatever you're doing in life.
As my kids get older, which I have teens and younger ones, my teens, I didn't give them chores. I gave them management positions.
Okay.
So, I mean, they definitely have the chores of, I call it everybody helps. So like, you don't get paid for cleaning the kitchen. You have a kitchen night, 3 nights a week, and that's your night because you live in this house too.
Sure. Yep.
But as far as like the farm or other things in our life, my daughter is the chicken manager. We kind of joke, but I mean, she lets me know how many hens we need to order every spring, or she lets me know when we need to buy more eggs to incubate, and then she handles the brooder and the incubator. She even wrote up like kind of like a set of SOPs for running the incubator and stuff, so that when her and I travel, my husband has everything there in place. And then she used that set of SOPs to do her 4-H presentation last year.
So awesome.
And it's just,
There's learning in everything.
Yeah, it gave her that ownership where she was like, this is not only my job, I need to make my job, I need to make it better.
Yeah, that's so great.
Her twin brother, he's in charge of our dairy cows. And he raises heifers for 4-H, and he breaks dairy heifers and sells them. And that's there's more to it. Like, he handles the sanitation, he handles the making sure the milk gets down and strained and in the fridge. It's not his chore, it's his management position. And then with the management positions on the farm, they get more of a financial benefit from that. It's not necessarily they get paid a certain amount every week, but I front them their 4-H animals every year.
Sure. That's a really great way to phrase things, I think, because my kids are young, so we're just kind of on the beginning of that. We have that conversation with them a lot about like, oh, Mom, why do I have to clean? It's like, well, you're part of a family and this is our home and it takes us all to run it, and we've gotten ducks during the pandemic. We did do goats for a period of time, but the kids were so little and the goats were like running them over. So
everybody has to go through their goat phase to get it out of their system.
I think so. Mine was literally like, we started fostering during the pandemic too, and actually adopted a little boy in 2021 out of foster care. But my thought was, we need these therapy goats. These kids can't go and pet the cows, so we need little animals.
Right.
And so I put a Facebook post out and said, whoever can give me goats today, like, I will buy them today. Like, I think I needed the goats more than the kids, probably. They were so cute until they weren't.
Right. Well, I really want a therapy alpaca right now, and my husband won't go for it. So he's like, you don't need...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, he goes, you don't need an alpaca. He goes, but if you want an alpaca, you can get one if you do all of the care for it. I'm like, okay, Dad. And I was like, that's fine. I was like, as soon as you finish that pasture. And he's like, no, you're doing all the care. So if you want the alpaca, you finish the pasture. I was like, oh, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I get that way too. There's like a exotic livestock auction here in town every spring, and they bring the coolest stuff. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't know I needed that animal. But now that I see it, I definitely need that zebra.
Yeah. I'm like, they're considered livestock guardian animals. And he's like, you really need a livestock, you need an alpaca to protect our pigs. Like, those pigs can handle themselves.
Right. Well, my whole thought too is, our kids are so blessed to live this way. And my thought is, how do I bring that to other kids? And I don't know about you, but that's kind of what started me writing children's books. Is I just saw that everything about agriculture and everything about farming and ranching was just either such a characterized version, cartoony, where the animals walked and talked and the farmer was like the bad guy, or it was just so far off or laced with agenda. And there was a movie, Barnyard, that had come out about the time I started writing the books. And the main character was a cow that was a boy that had an udder. And
that's weird.
So much. It was very weird. And I was just like, this is not right. And so that's kind of what started me writing these books. And I realized, man, I'll probably be writing books about agriculture till I'm an 80-year-old lady, because there's just so many stories to tell, and kids are just so far removed from agriculture and where their food comes from that it's just a shame. And so it is a passion of mine to get into the classroom and get these books in front of kids, just to give them an opportunity to, hey, meet a rancher in real life and ask some questions, and hopefully check out these books over and over again, from each class or each kid, and reach their parents or grandparents or whoever's reading the stories to them too. It's there's a lot of work to be done out there, I think.
Oh, I agree. That was kind of, when I originally started writing my curriculum, of course it was to reach kids, but it was, my first part of it was, I'm putting in all the work to create this curriculum for my kids. Why don't I start organizing that into something that's usable for someone else? And then
Yeah.
as I
Yep.
started writing it and really meeting the people that wanted to teach their kids this, I realized, and of course, it was all mid-pandemic when I started writing it. And I realized that our generation and younger have zero clue where our food comes from and that full story of how it's all interconnected.
Right.
And some of that interconnectivity is, we're all connected to nature, but some of it is that interconnectivity of, systems and business and where these products come from, or, people start farm. I follow so many of these homestead pages because that's where, my hat lies at the moment. I say at the
Mm-hmm.
moment, just, because I was a hardcore rancher and agriculturalist, and now I've moved more into that foodie homestead space, just in some realizations of where we've kind of gone wrong in a lot of our thing. Not that I'm anti-agriculture at this point by any means. I want to kind of open people's eyes to all of it.
Right. Right.
And that was kind of where this curriculum has gone, is, like I said, so many people are starting farms right now, and that's a wonderful, beautiful thing that, please, more people need to, but
Yeah.
they don't even know where to start. They don't know where to buy things. I mean, even, it sounds so little, but I talk to people and they're like, well, I want to start, growing my own vegetables. And I see online that you can, every homesteader is all trying to teach you how to be frugal, and look, you can start your plants in little paper cups. And it's like, great, you
Yep.
can start your plants in little paper cups, but then if you decide to make a homestead business out of it and you want to sell these plants, it's not very professional to be selling them in little paper cups.
Right.
And the problem that these people have is they go down to, like, Walmart or Home Depot and want to buy pots for their plants, and they're $1.50 a piece.
Yep.
Like, that doesn't make sense. Where I can
Mm-hmm.
go to a greenhouse supplier and I just bought 800 pots for $60.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, that's just one piece of it. But for somebody who has worked in agriculture or any type of business, really, and then apply that to this type of setting, knowing that even these things are out there is a message that I'm trying to help more people with.
Yeah. Growing your own food and yeah, transitioning it into a business, the learning curve is huge, and nature is very unforgiving too.
Mhm.
And it can be pretty,
Well, and
pretty
even
disheartening.
growing your own food, you have to look at that as a business, because it doesn't make sense to grow all your own food if it costs you twice as much as it would to go to the grocery store.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is the tricky balance, I think, that you have to navigate and weigh out.
Mhm.
My sister during the pandemic started a cut flower business and fruit and vegetable garden, and she's amazing at it. And I was like, well,
Oh.
I'll have a small one then too, and I'm terrible at it. And I'm like, for how much money I put into this and how very few green beans or whatever we got, like, our family's going to starve to death, So I think moral of the story is I learned my family is really good at raising beef, and we have ducks, so we have eggs. So we're in charge of the protein, and I have delegated her to the fruits and vegetables. And I
Well,
think
then
in all of this, like the
you barter
homesteading
and
is
you
community.
swap.
Yep, community is so
Yes,
important that you can't be good at everything. It's just impossible. And
you
I
can't.
mean, you can try, but if you can collaborate with people, that is a true gift.
My husband does mechanics for the couple of local farms, and we trade for grain and hay.
That's great.
He does all the mechanics for the neighbors, and that covers all of our hay for the year.
That's wonderful.
And
And it's
then
like that's like unheard of that people do business that way anymore.
yeah, and at least where we live, that's totally normal. I mean, that's just, we actually, our well pump broke, and we called the well guy, and he came out and he looked at it, gave us a quote, and we said, okay, would you take a butchered hog for 800 of that? And he's like, yeah, when can it be ready?
Wow.
But he didn't
That's
even skip a
wonderful.
beat. Like, he expected the barter first.
I think the world is headed in that direction in a lot of ways. And if it's not where you're at, it can be. It's just about building your network of people and valuing the skills or the knowledge or the assets that they bring to the table. I've got a friend that's really knowledgeable in health and wellness, and man, if my kids get sick, I'm calling her and asking her for advice, and pretty soon she's sending me at-home remedies to try. And it's like, but then, if she needs beef brought to town, I can do that for her, and it's just, I think they say it takes a village to raise kids anymore. And I think our society and how busy it's gotten and fast paced, we've lost the village. And I think we're getting back to that, or there should be an effort to get back to that.
And I think it's just an understanding that the village is your peers and not your government.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Government is not coming to save you. It's, in fact, going to make life harder for you. But
yes. So I don't
you're
want
speaking my language.
Yeah. So I feel like we're brought a lot to the table today, and I, unfortunately, with my schedule, I'm really tight today. So I want to make sure that you have plenty of an opportunity to talk about your platform and your products.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. I've really enjoyed the conversation more than you possibly could know, even. It's been a tough week of homeschooling, to say the least. So you've energized me. But
that's good. And I can understand that, because I was so maxed out last night. I called my old business coach, who's a friend of mine too. And I was like, I just need to talk about anything. Like, so just talk to me. Tell me what you're doing with your business or something. Like I just need a minute,
Yep. Having a support system is really valuable, especially if you're going to go against the grain and do things counter to the culture.
Yes.
But so my retail business kind of started during the pandemic too. I had been speaking all over the country, and of course the world shut down, and so I lost a year's worth of work and had to kind of.
So I want to stop you for just 1 minute. What do you speak on?
So I speak at agricultural conferences. It's either we're talking about, family succession planning, business, consumer trends, what are people wanting to buy, regulatory burdens that are coming down, the pipe from Washington, D.C. that might make it harder for landowners or for livestock producers. Basically just current topics and trends with encouragement and kind of motivation for people to keep up the good fight, even when it's a hard life sometimes. So people need to pick me up once in a while. So I'm kind of a little cheerleader in that way. But
good.
I lost a year's worth of work, and I had some children's books, and I just started kind of expanding into farm toys and clothing and jewelry, and it kind of exploded from there, and it keeps me really busy. But I write a blog every week, Mondays. That's just a kind of a word of encouragement. So folks can check it out at amandaradke.com. And then my books, I'm really proud of them. There's 8 different titles, and most of them are about livestock or the cattle industry, but there's different themes from soil health to careers in agriculture to the last one that just came out was just a simple one about baking pizza at grandma's house and the ingredients you need and that kind of thing. And
one of my children's books is Weekend at Grammy's, and it's all about why we preserve food.
Oh, well, isn't that the wonderful thing when you can learn from multiple generations? I mean, that's such a gift in itself that not everyone has. So everyone deserves a grandma that can teach them life skills. But we're losing a lot of those life skills, I think, with each passing generation. That hopefully
I think even at this point, my mom knew nothing about this type of preserving or wasn't interested in this type of preserving. So my kids don't have that from that grandparent, and my mother-in-law isn't interested in it either. Like they were at that age where everything was moving to that convenience window.
Yep. Oh, same here. And my grandma passed away last year, and there's just a million questions I wish I could ask her now. That's like, hey, grandma, I really never did can, and now I'm trying to figure it out. And I mean, for her, she would laugh. Like, this is just basic. Like, how do you not know how to do this stuff? But it just goes to show you can learn new things. And the older generations weren't dumb. They were wise to prepare have things on hand and to grow their own. And yeah, it takes more time, but it feels good, and it's something you can do together as a family, and it's great food, and there's just so much in it that's wonderful. But yeah, so that's what I do on my website, I guess. And I would invite people to check it out, or let me know if they read the books to their kids. I would love feedback. And yeah, we'll be working on book number 9 this year, so stay tuned for updates there as well.
Well, and for my listeners, the reason I reached out to Amanda is because I saw her children's books, and I'm so excited that there's someone else kind of in that same mind space of me of teaching agriculture to kids in a real way. And so I wanted to bring her on because, for us, we're kind of pioneers in this field, and trying to meet the demands of hungry learners. I would rather try to support other creators than try to meet that demand all by myself.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to coordinate and get to an event sometime where we can have booths side by side and talk shop. And
that would be awesome. And
maybe one day.
One of your books that really excited me was the one about beef as a protein.
Yeah. Oh, Beef Strong?
Yes.
Yeah. It seems like the whole world's going plant-based, which I don't argue with people that want to eat different than me, but I do want to empower people to know that there's, such rich nutrition that comes from animal proteins, that, every serving of beef has zinc, iron, and protein, and the B vitamins and essential saturated fats. And man, there's just so much good nutrition and that comes from beef. It makes me sad that people are being told that they should be scared of it and should limit it in their diets, when just my own family has experienced such health and wellness from making that the center of our diets. And so Beef Strong talks about sports nutrition and encouraging athletes, kids that like sports, to put beef at the center of their plate and fuel their active lifestyle.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, one of my stances since college has been, if you want to be vegetarian or vegan for your own reasons, your own health reasons, your own diet choices, that's great. I just hope that you're not doing it because you were miseducated on something.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I moved to DC for an internship right out of high school, and my roommate was a vegan animal rights activist, which was very educational for me. But she had seen a YouTube video of animal abuse, and she was just convinced that that's how we all were in agriculture, even though I was the only farmer she had ever met in her life. And so it was a very long summer, because she had very deeply set beliefs. But I am happy to say by the end of the summer, she was eating steak with me. So that's exciting. Good. And that never happened. But, once she had a chance to meet someone in agriculture and have her questions, honestly answered, it was like she couldn't deny the truth, even though the propaganda is really great out there. And it's just a shame that there's like these fear tactics out there designed to get people to eliminate an entire food from their diets. And so that's kind of my goal too, is to kind of counteract some of that stuff. And it's coming from the environmental extremists that are blaming climate change on cow farts, that can be debunked. And, the animal welfare piece that the animal rights activists are pushing, and then the diet piece that, frankly, the government's dietary guidelines are dead set against animal proteins and fats in the diet. And so it's coming from every angle. And I've kind of found if everyone's saying one thing, it's probably the exact opposite. So you can
go in
eat a steak and
go in the other direction.
Live your life.
Yeah, I actually did a video recently because my husband had to have surgery down in the Bay Area in California at a VA clinic. You gotta love VA. They only let you have surgery where they want to let you have surgery.
Sure.
And so we had to spend 10 days in Palo Alto, which is just like, even though we're from Northern California, which I always like to clarify. I mean, I don't care if my listeners get tired of hearing it. Like we were normal in Northern California, but it's not the California everybody hears about. In fact, I lived in a community that's more rural than my very rural community in North Idaho. So, um, but yeah, we had to spend 2 weeks in Palo Alto, which is just miserable. It's like a nightmare for me. And the lady who runs the like VA, it's like the same as Ronald McDonald House, but it's called Fisher House, and it's for like spouses of veterans.
Okay.
And, we were telling her that we were farmers, and she's like, oh, that's nice. She's like, I'm not a vegetarian or anything, but I just feel so bad for the way animals are treated on farms. And I was like, what?
Oh.
Like, I mean, I've grown up in agriculture my entire life, and I honestly I can't think of a single situation where animals were necessarily treated poorly. And if they were, the community, the ag community at large was not okay with it.
Right, exactly.
And so she was like, really? Like, and I was like, in fact, yeah, in my books, I teach kids on, respect for the animals that are providing for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, she like mind blown for her. She had no clue that farmers felt this way about their animals.
Yeah, that's sad, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And so actually a few days later, I was having lunch in the like dining area, and she came in and she's like, I've been thinking about what you said. And she goes, I've always planned on, when I retired, running like a refuge for retired dairy cows so that they don't just get butchered.
Oh my, okay.
And I was like, okay, well, if that's something that you are passionate about, I think that's great. She's like, but what I realized is that I have no clue how to take care of large livestock, and I haven't wanted to ask a single farmer because I thought that's who I was protecting these animals from.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, let's have a conversation. And I went through, if you're, rescuing animals, they might be coming from a situation that have, unsanitary conditions, and they might need to, go through that barrage of worming and vaccines and, things that people don't believe necessarily are inherently good. But I mean, if you're working with animals that aren't going into the food chain and they have potential to be sick coming from poor situations, you need to make sure that you have a really good working relationship with your vet. And, I kind of just went through all those steps with her, and she ended up buying my book through it, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was I wanted her to feel like she had the actionable steps that she needed to take to be able to fulfill her dream.
Sure.
But
in the process, she probably is going to learn how much she doesn't know and how much, it takes. And yeah, just having someone in her corner that could tell her the truth is
like,
trust me,
you don't want to run a rescue for all the dairy cows in California. You don't have enough room on your land.
No, that would be quite the task.
But if you want to have a rescue where, maybe there's a couple of cows that somebody's farm is shutting down and they don't want to see them go to butcher or something, that's wonderful that you would be willing to take them,
Right. Right. And at the same token, it's like, I'm happy to know that those dairy cows, when they're butchered, they can go into the beef system as hamburger and nourish families. And it's not, that circle of life is really hard for people to understand. And I appreciate people's empathy, and willingness to care outside of their own, their own worlds or their own bubble. But at the same time, I just think, man, there's so many people that are hungry in this world that it's like this cow is providing a service and enriching human life. And it's people. Ultimately, as a rancher, I care about people even more than I care about the cows. I mean, I love cattle. That's my passion, but providing for people is just like the greatest honor on earth.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. So we're actually completely out of time, but I like to ask all of my guests, what does keep growing mean to them?
Keep growing. I guess I'd probably go back to our homeschool philosophy of teaching kids to be continual learners, to be hungry, to gain more knowledge and to continue growing in themselves and in their character and in their skills. And that applies for adults too. You know, if we're like plants, if we need water and sunshine and care, and we can really bloom even under hard circumstances if we have that continual growth mindset. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's
It
where I
does.
landed.
The theme of my podcast is grow your own food and grow as a person.
I love it.
So thank you so much for coming on today. And like I said, I wish we could chat longer. We'll definitely have to come up with some ideas soon.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me. And I hope we can collaborate down the road or, let's do this again sometime.
For sure. Well, thank you. And thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education. And I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at Homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing.